Downsizing is a 2017 film starring Matt Damon, Christoph Waltz, Hong Chau, and, albeit briefly, Kristen Wiig and Jason Sudeikis. It follows the story of a man played by Matt Damon who decides to undergo a process called downsizing, whereby his body is shrunken to about 1/10 of its regular size. The process is heralded as the solution to the very real issues of overpopulation and climate change, but also has the side benefit of reducing one's cost of living, therefore forming a new class of tiny retirees who can enjoy a lifestyle analogous to that of a full-sized elite. Welcome to the Popcorn Lobotomy Elite Review of Downsizing. Myself and my inner circle of associates have long been fans of Alexander Payne. From the wicked social satire of Election to the unabashed love letter to wine in Sideways, Payne has always managed to tackle topics and themes that resonate with our kind. Downsizing is the next installment in his extensive filmography, but in this case I must say it appears there's something sadly lacking from the formula that made his previous films much more successful. Once the master of balancing sharp satire, physical comedy, and touching drama, so I'm told by people who are susceptible to such emotions, Payne fails to find the balance in this rather unstructured and poorly focused film, leading to as many misfires as it has entertaining or enlightening moments. Downsizing, despite its charm, satirical bent, and high-concept central idea, tends to meander aimlessly through its rather thin plot, never quite finding its stride. It admittedly starts with a strong premise and clear environmental message, but simply does not follow through strongly on either of them. If one were to watch the film from the halfway point, one might be forgiven for failing to notice that the Leisureland community had been downsized at all. The central premise of the story becomes almost entirely irrelevant to the proceedings. The only real reminder that the film takes place in a downsized community at all comes in the form of a giant flower that Matt Damon carries around proudly for a good portion of the film. It's as if it were the only large prop the production could afford. If that was the case, they really should have come to me for additional funding, as I would have happily provided it, in return for the implementation of a few very minor script changes, of course. After spending an exorbitant amount of time focusing on the Leisureland community and its downsized inhabitants, admittedly with several well-observed scenes showing what happens when low to middle income workers suddenly find themselves elevated in class and wealth, the film shoots off on a tangent, introducing a love interest for Damon and taking him on a distasteful journey of self-sacrifice and community service. Very odd and quite uninteresting, as you might imagine. Now, don't get me wrong, I did enjoy Hong Chau's portrayal of the funny-speaking female protagonist, Ngoc Lan Tran, as I procured many Vietnamese refugees just like her back in the days of the Vietnam War. Of course, this was all before it became frighteningly unfashionable to help the victims of underprivileged, war-torn regions by giving them a small locked room and a few food scraps in exchange for cleaning and cooking services. But no, I'm the bad guy for helping the underprivileged. Such a crazy world. Anyway, in the end, Downsizing doubles down on its environmental message by sending the characters to Norway, where a downsized underground vault has been built to allow a small handful of downsized individuals to weather the worsening environmental situation. Putting aside the unrealistic notion that a lower-class salaried employee like Matt Damon's character would ever be invited into the gene pool of people tasked with restarting humanity following the apocalypse, re-emphasizing the environmental message was a learned choice from director Alexander Payne. It's really quite critical that the people who desire to continue residing on this planet be convinced of the seriousness of the issue. And of course, it's well known that the best way to influence the masses is through subtle positive messaging and entertainments and some such. It's like Bill Gates said in his brilliant TED talk on the subject: to avoid catastrophic extinction-level climate change, carbon emissions must go pretty close to zero, which means one or more of the multipliers in the formula that defines carbon output needs to get real close to zero. People call it eugenics, but it's simple mathematics. I certainly don't relish the idea of going extinct, and I'd imagine you would feel similarly, so don't judge us if, when the time comes where we must take decisive action, the only available options for self-preservation appear somewhat extreme. I really do hope that science can find a way to solve overpopulation as portrayed in the film Downsizing, because in the absence of a humane, workable methodology for reducing the resource consumption of the average individual, the only other option, well, suffice to say that the problem will be solved one way or the other. The only choice we have in the matter is the degree of unpleasantness that must be suffered in order to solve it. At the end of the day, downsizing poses an obvious but rather important question. Would you, as a member of the human species, rather be shrunken down and live in an affluent domed community, or would you prefer to have blood gush violently from your eyes and subsequently suffocate to death as your organs are catastrophically devastated by a pernicious flesh-dissolving bioagent? A very good question indeed. Perhaps you would be so kind as to leave your answers in the comments below.